Rain pelted the cracked pavement outside the diner, each drop a cold, sharp sting against the world. Tom sat hunched in his pickup truck, the engine long since dead, his hands gripping the steering wheel as if it could anchor him to something solid. His daughter's hospital bill lay crumpled on the passenger seat, the numbers screaming louder than the storm. 12,347, a number that might as well have been a million. His fingers, rough from years of fixing engines at the auto shop, trembled as he pressed them to his forehead. He was 42, a single dad, and the weight of the world was crushing him. His little girl, Ellie, was 8, her leukemia a thief stealing her childhood, and now, maybe her life. He'd sold his tools, his TV, even his late wife's wedding ring to keep up with the payments, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The diner's neon sign flickered through the rain mail's Placid's warm glow, a cruel contrast to the chill in his bones. He didn't notice the woman at first, crumpled against the diner's brick wall, her arm cradled awkwardly, blood seeping through her torn coat sleeve. She was shivering, her silver hair plastered to her face, her eyes wide with pain and something else, fear maybe, or shame. Tom's gaze caught hers through the truck's fogged-up window, and for a moment, he wanted to look away. He had enough problems, but those eyes, they held him. They weren't just asking for help, they were pleading. Tom pushed open the truck door, the hinges groaning louder than the wind. He stepped into the rain, his work boots splashing through puddles as he crossed the lot. "Ma'am, you okay?" His voice was gruff, tired, but gentle, like he was talking to Ellie. The woman flinched, clutching her arm tighter. I'm fine," she said, her voice thin, almost lost in the storm. But she wasn't fine. Blood dripped onto the pavement, mixing with the rain. Tom crouched beside her, his knees creaking, his flannel shirt soaking through. "That arm doesn't look fine," he said, softer now. He noticed her coat-expensive, wool, the kind you'd see in a department store window, not a thrift shop rack, but it was torn, dirty, like she'd been running from something. "Let me take a look. I'm no doctor, but I've patched up my fair share of scrapes." She hesitated, her lips trembling, but then she nodded, just once, and extended her arm. Tom's hands, steady despite the cold, gently peeled back the sleeve. A deep gash ran from her wrist to her elbow, jagged and angry. "Jesus," he muttered under his breath. "You need a hospital." Her eyes flashed with panic. No hospitals, please." There was a story there, one she wasn't telling, but Tom didn't push. He'd learned long ago that some wounds ran deeper than skin. He glanced back at his truck, the cab cluttered with empty coffee cups and Ellie's old stuffed bear. His first aid kit was buried under the seat, a relic from his days as a volunteer firefighter before life got too heavy. "Stay here," he said, though she didn't look like she was going anywhere. He jogged back, rain soaking his hair, and dug out the Kita-battered tin box with gauze, antiseptic, and tape. Back at her side, he worked quickly, his hands moving with the quiet precision of a man who'd learned to fix things, whether it was carburetors or broken spirits. "This'll sting," he warned, dabbing antiseptic on the wound. She winced, a sharp hiss escaping her lips, but she didn't pull away. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to distract her. Her eyes flicked to his, wary, but she answered. "Margaret." Her voice was stronger now, cultured, like she'd once read poetry in a quiet library. "I'm Tom," he said, wrapping gauze around her arm. "You're gonna be okay, Margaret. Just keep this clean." She watched him, her gaze softening, like she was seeing him for the first time. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom paused, tape between his fingers. He didn't have an answer, not really. "Because you needed it," he said finally, his voice rough with truth. Margaret's hand, the uninjured one, reached out and touched his wrist, just for a moment. Her fingers were cold, but there was warmth in the gesture, a spark that caught Tom off guard. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the lines etched deep in her face, not just age, but grief, loss, the kind of pain that didn't show in scars. "You didn't have to stop," she said, her eyes searching his. Tom shrugged, awkward under her gaze. "Couldn't just leave you out here." He helped her to her feet, her weight light but unsteady. "You got somewhere to go?" he asked. She hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak, then closing again. "Not really," she admitted, and the words carried a weight that made Tom's chest ache. He thought of Ellie, alone in her hospital bed, her small hand clutching that stuffed bear. He thought of the diner, warm and dry, just steps away. "Come on," he said, nodding toward the neon sign. "Let's get you out of this rain. Coffee's on me." Margaret's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "You're too kind," she said. And there was something in her tone gratitude, yes, but also wonder, like she hadn't heard those words in a long time. Inside Mel's place, the air smelled of fried eggs and burnt toast, the kind of comfort that wrapped around you like a quilt. The diner was half empty, a few truckers nursing coffee at the counter, a waitress with tired eyes wiping down tables. Tom guided Margaret to a booth by the window, the vinyl seats cracked but warm. He ordered 2 coffees, black, and a slice of apple pie to share because it was the cheapest thing on the menu and he figured she needed something sweet. Margaret sat across from him, her hands wrapped around the mug, the steam rising like a prayer. "You don't know me," she said after a long sip, her voice steadier now. "Why trust a stranger?" Tom leaned back, his own coffee untouched. "Don't know. Guess I've always been a sucker for a damsel in distress." He meant it as a joke, but his voice cracked, betraying the truth. He was the one in distress, drowning in bills and fear for Ellie, but he couldn't say it. Not to her. Not to anyone. Margaret's eyes softened, and she reached for the pie, breaking off a small piece with her fork. "My husband used to say that," she said, her voice distant. "Called me his damsel. He's gone now." The words hung there, heavy, and Tom felt the air shift, like they'd stepped into something sacred. "Lost my wife 3 years ago," Tom said before he could stop himself. "Cancer! Same thing my daughter's fighting now." His throat tightened, and he looked down at his hands, the knuckles scarred from years of work. Margaret's gaze held his, steady, like she was carrying some of his pain for him. "I'm sorry," she said, and it wasn't just words, it was the kind of sorry that came from knowing. They sat in silence for a while, the clink of dishes and the hum of the jukebox filling the space. Then Margaret spoke, her voice soft, but clear. "I had a daughter once. She was everything. Car accident took her 20 years ago, but it still feels like yesterday." Her fingers tightened around the mug, her knuckles white. Tom didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything. He just reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers, not quite touching, but close enough to matter. She looked at his hand, then at him, and her lips curved into that almost smile again. "You're a good man, Tom," she said, and he felt his face flush, because no one had called him that in years, not since his wife died, not since the world started falling apart. They talked, the words coming easier now, like a dam breaking. Tom told her about Ellie, how she loved drawing stars on the hospital walls with crayons, how she'd giggle when he snuck her extra jello. Margaret shared stories of her daughter, Lila, how she'd sing off-key to old country songs, how she dreamed of being an artist. The pie sat half-eaten, the coffee gone cold, but neither cared. It was the kind of conversation that felt like a lifeline, each word a thread stitching them together. Margaret's hand trembled as she set down her mug, and Tom noticed the way her eyes kept darting to the window, like she was waiting for something or someone. "You running from something?" he asked, his voice gentle, no judgment. She froze, her breath catching, and for a moment he thought she'd bolt, but then she sighed, her shoulders sagging. "Not running," she said. "Just lost. I have money, Tom, more than I know what to do with, but it doesn't fix anything. Not the loneliness, not the guilt." Her voice broke, and she looked away, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. Tom didn't push, but he felt it, the weight of her words, the truth she wasn't ready to tell. The diner's clock ticked toward midnight, the rain slowing to a drizzle outside. Tom's phone buzzed a text from the hospital. "Ellie's asking for you." His heart clenched, and he stood, fishing out a crumpled $10 bill for the check. "I gotta go," he said, his voice thick. "My girl needs me." Margaret nodded, her eyes glistening. Go to her, she said. And Tom, thank you. For tonight. For everything. He gave her a nod, his throat too tight for words, and headed for the door. But before he stepped outside, he turned back. You got a place to stay? He asked. She hesitated, then nodded, though her eyes said otherwise. I'll be fine, she said, and he wanted to believe her. He scribbled his number on a napkin and slid it across the table. If you're ever not fine, you call me. She took the napkin, her fingers brushing his, and that spark was there again, small but real. The hospital was a 20-minute drive, the roads slick with rain. Tom sat by Ellie's bed, her small hand in his, her breathing steady but weak. The stuffed bear was tucked under her arm, its fur worn from years of love. He told her about the diner, about Margaret, leaving out the blood and the pain. She was nice, he said, his voice low, reminded me of Grandma. Ellie smiled, her eyes half closed. You're always helping people, Daddy, she whispered, and Tom's chest ached because he didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man failing his daughter. Days passed, then weeks. Tom went back to the diner, hoping to see Margaret, but she was never there. The napkin with his number was gone, and he wondered if she'd thrown it away. Life ground on work, hospital, bills, repeat. He didn't notice the envelope at first, tucked under his truck's wiper blade one crisp November morning. It was plain, no name, just a thick stack of paper inside. His hands shook as he opened it. A check. 50. 0. Made out to him. No note, no explanation, but he knew Margaret. He stared at the numbers, his vision blurring. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was enough to keep Ellie in treatment, to buy time, to hope. He tried to find her. He asked at the diner, checked the local shelters, even called the hospital to see if a woman with a bandaged arm had checked in. Nothing. But then, the day before Thanksgiving, another envelope arrived, this time at the hospital. Inside was a letter, handwritten, the ink smudged in places like she'd cried while writing it. Tom, you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, kindness, without expecting anything in return. I've spent years hiding, ashamed of my wealth, my mistakes, my loneliness. You reminded me what it means to be human. The money is for Ellie, for you. Keep being the man you are. It was signed Margaret, with a P.S. I'm okay now. Don't look for me. Tom read it again and again, his throat tight, his eyes burning. He didn't know her last name, didn't know where she'd gone, but he felt her in that letter, in the weight of her words, in the way she'd seen him when he felt invisible. Thanksgiving came, and Tom sat with Ellie in her hospital room, a tray of turkey and mashed potatoes between them, the TV playing an old football game. She was stronger today, her cheeks pinker, her laugh brighter. The check had paid for a new round of treatment, and the doctors were hopeful cautiously, but hopeful. Tom held her hand, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. He thought of Margaret, out there somewhere, carrying her own pain, but leaving behind a gift that changed everything. He didn't know her story, not all of it, but he knew enough. Kindness, even a small act like bandaging an arm in the rain, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways you couldn't predict. He looked at Ellie, her eyes bright with mischief, as she stole a bite of his pie, and he smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. Life wasn't fixed, but it was enough. It was hope. Maybe you felt it too a moment when someone's kindness changed everything, even just for a day. A stranger's smile, a helping hand, a moment of connection when you needed it most. Has kindness ever changed your life? Share your story in the comments below, and let's spread a little more light together. This story is a work of fiction or dramatized for entertainment purposes. While it may be inspired by real human emotions and events, all characters, names, and situations are either entirely fictional or modified for storytelling. This content fully complies with YouTube's community guidelines and is intended to inspire, not mislead.